Here are the stories we're covering this week in the Category 5.tv newsroom. Germany's Supreme Court has rejected a legal case that sought to stop people using the popular AdBlock Plus program that removes ads from websites. A Chinese web giant has found a Windows 0 day and is keeping the details quiet while working with Microsoft on the issue. An unpatchable vulnerability has been found in the Nintendo Switch that can be exploited to run custom code. And do you run Drupal? You need to upgrade immediately. These stories are coming right up. Don't go anywhere.
Jeff Weston,
Yeah, man.
you're building a brand new, beautiful website,
What?
aren't you?
No. Am I?
Oh, you're a terrible actor.
What?
This is where acting comes into play.
Oh, I didn't know we were acting.
You're supposed to act.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Yeah, I'm building a really cool website. Are you building a really cool website? Just because Jeff is confused doesn't mean you have to be. Visit cat5.tv/dreamhost to sign up for unlimited web hosting for your website with unlimited email accounts, MySQL databases, the latest version of PHP, WordPress, and more, and even a free domain name registration. It's less than $6 per month, so sign up today. cat5.tv/dreamhost.
This is the Category 5.tv newsroom, covering the week's top tech stories with a slight Linux bias.
I'm Sasha Rickman, and here are the top stories we're following this week. Germany's Supreme Court has rejected a legal case that sought to stop people using the popular AdBlock Plus program that removes ads from websites. The lawsuit was started 3 years ago by German publishing giant Axel Springer. It alleged that the way AdBlock Plus stopped people seeing advertisements on its sites amounted to unfair competition. Axel Springer said that it would continue its legal challenge by taking the issue to Germany's constitutional court. The German publishing firm first complained about AdBlock Plus in 2015, alleging that it broke competition laws by letting firms pay to be on a whitelist to stop their ads being blocked. It took the case to the Supreme Court after losing the first round of legal action in 2015. Other German media firms that also launched related legal actions said the simple blocking of ads was a violation of local laws designed to promote competition. The Supreme Court disagreed with Springer's allegations and said no laws were being broken because it was up to individual users whether or not they used the software. The creators of AdBlock Plus welcomed the ruling and said in a statement that it was excited that Germany's highest court upheld the right every internet citizen possesses to block unwanted advertising online. After the verdict, Klaas-Hendrik Soing, Springer's head of media law, said the ruling was an attack on the heart of the free media. So, is it an attack on the heart of free media?
No. I don't think so at all.
You don't think so?
No?
Nope, not at all. I think this is a great ruling, and I think it was a proper ruling. Now, granted, it's probably based on German law, so depending on what each country has for their own laws would dictate how the court would be able to make a determination. Mm-hmm. But I completely, 100% stand behind Germany's Supreme Court on this, because if you say legally in court, you are not allowed to deny advertisements, you have just commercialized the human race. And quite frankly, that's a right that is individual. So I stand with the German court on this one. If I don't want to see ads, I don't want to see ads.
I think that this is a very polarizing topic in that if you're in the free media, that you have to be able to generate revenue. So here's the thing. My newsstand as a newspaper used to be a physical newsstand. I used to have paper boys on the corners selling newspapers for a nickel, and that was my revenue stream. And people would buy the newspaper from the local store. Now, my revenue stream, if you will, becomes a website, and it's very competitive. It's highly competitive because everything that's on the internet is expected to be free. So if I now put advertising on my site in order to be the compensation for the distribution of my news, and then you block it, then I'm not going to be able to do that. And I think that this is a very polarizing topic in that if you're in the free media, that you have to be able to generate revenue. So here's the thing. My newsstand as a newspaper used to be a physical newsstand. I used to have paper boys on the corners selling newspapers for a nickel, and that was my revenue stream. And now my revenue stream, if you will, becomes a website. And it's very competitive. It's highly competitive because everything that's on the internet is expected to be free. So if I now put advertising on my site in order to be the compensation for the distribution of my news, and then you block it, there's the other perspective, Jeff.
No, and I get that perspective, but here's my take on it. Advertising on the internet is not like traditional advertising. If you turn on the TV, you get commercials. You get a specific commercial that's been purchased to air at a certain time, regardless of what your personal life circumstances are. You go to online advertising, and it's based on the cookies and the data and the information that's shared through your internet usage. So it's not generic advertising, it's specific targeted advertising, and that is what I think acceptable to be blocked. If somebody says, look, I don't want my personal data being used to advertise back to me, thank you, leave me alone.
So if that was the case, then could we not say, let's make it so that AdBlock Plus, for example, in the case of this story, was to give an opt-out command to the advertising that says no tracking code, and only display generic ads, and the only thing that they're allowed to display are those generic ads that traditional media would have been purchasing, would have been selling.
I'd be okay with that. I really would, because then it's not targeted advertising based on your individual online profile. It's generic advertising.
A Chinese web giant has found a Windows 0 day and is keeping the details quiet while working with Microsoft on the issue. Chinese company Qiho 360 says it has found a Windows 0 day in the wild, but because it has notified Microsoft, it is not telling anyone else how it works. The company announced an apt attack on the unspecified 0 day on a global scale. It called the vulnerability a double kill bug, said it exploits the latest version of Internet Explorer and applications that use the IE kernel, and added that it's being spread in Microsoft Office documents that include a malicious web page. If a victim opens the document, the post claims the malicious code will run in the background to execute the unspecified attack program. Its only illustration of the attack is in the Chinese language annotated image shown here. Microsoft would far prefer that users stopped using Internet Explorer and adopt its Edge browser instead. Some users are proving stubborn, however. According to Net Market Share, IE still has a rested on 12% of the browser market. That is why last week's Patch Tuesday plugged a serious, if legacy, IE vulnerability, CVE 2014-0322, a remote code execution bug.
I don't use Edge. I don't like Edge.
I don't think people are going to use Edge. So what's the next best? I don't know, Robbie, can you weigh in on this? What's the next best browser to use if...
Okay, we've got Internet Explorer as the first option, Edge is the second, and her question is, what's the next best
Okay, you know what I
browser?
mean. What? Okay.
Pretty much
Okay.
anything.
No. What is the browser that
What is
isn't
it?
apt to be exploitable in this?
Sure. And maybe
fashion?
conforms to standards and is innovative, is fast, is good on resources, those kinds of things. So obviously, we're going to look at the top two, which are Firefox and Chrome, plain and simple. Now, you can get into other ones, Opera, and if you want to try out some of the obscure ones, that's fine too. But realistically, Chrome, Firefox, they're about on par, believe it or not, now, especially with Firefox 57, which uses less memory than earlier versions of Firefox. It's faster, and even boasts that it's faster than Chrome. I don't know if that's true yet. I haven't benchmarked it myself. I've had problems with Firefox in the past with memory leaks. And I don't like Firefox's approach to the app ecosystem, the add-on ecosystem, in that I think that any browser that kills off their entire developer base like they did is with Firefox 56, I think that's just a no-no to me. I think that they really needed to work with their developers better, so that was a bit of a red flag. Now, both browsers are excellent. Chrome, Firefox. Sasha, can you imagine, my first question to you is going to be, Do you have a Firefox phone or do you have an Android phone?
I have an Android phone.
You have an Android phone. So
Yes.
we have to just think about the fact that, okay, what one is going to work better for you, Chrome or Firefox? So if they're pretty much matched up as far as the quality of the browser goes at this point, which one is going to work better for you? Now, Chrome is developed by Google, the same company that manufactures your phone's operating system, Android. So part of Chrome is that you can log into your Google profile, and it gives you access to things like shared bookmarks with your phone, shared bookmarks with your other computers using Chrome, and it gives you shared access to your history and passwords and things that you do within that Google ecosystem. So as an Android user, would you find benefit to the fact that you're accessing your email in the same way on multiple different platforms? And you're nodding, and I think that the answer is probably...
The answer is yes.
In your case would then be Chrome is probably the best browser for you. Firefox doesn't offer that same kind of functionality that is going to be tied into your phone the way that the Google browser is. So that's where I would probably lean in your case.
And using Chrome is safe against an attack like this.
We have to be
for
smart.
now.
We have to be wise. We have to always be mindful that phishers, which are folks that are out there trying to get your information, they're out there tricking users. They're bringing up browser windows, so web pages essentially, that look like error messages, that look like a Windows error, and click here to fix it, or call this number to reach out to Microsoft because we've got a patch for your computer, these kinds of things. So as long as you're privy to the fact that, hey, there are web threats out there that you need to watch out for on any browser, you need to be smart about those things, and part of that is just knowing that you need to watch out for those things. Then, yeah, you're safer. Now, what it boils down to here with IE is that the things that are happening do not require the user to do an idiotic thing. That's what it boils down to. So with the old Outlook Express, if you simply touched an email that had malware on it, boom, you're infected. You didn't even have to open it. You didn't even have to click a link. It was in your system. What is it with Microsoft products? That was a Microsoft product. Now, Internet Explorer, same thing. You simply touch that link and boom, you're infected. You've got this malware, whatever the 0 day is, that's the exploit, and it can get into your system if you're not patched. And Microsoft's looking at it and saying, oh, that's an old browser. We don't support it. We don't want people using it. Do we even want to patch it? I guess we'd better, but they're not, that's not the game that they're wanting to play. So yes, right. Chrome is going to be safer because those exploits are not a part of Chrome, and the development ecosystem of Chrome and Firefox, indeed, is based on a completely different model to that of Microsoft.
Now, one thing that does give me pause for concern about this story is, in my experience in dealing with government resources, I would say that generally governments lag behind on updating. And
sure.
As of a year ago, I know when I was looking at some government infrastructure for a client of mine, they were using Internet Explorer because they still had Windows NT.
Right.
And I'm going,
wow,
I can't believe this is on a government computer. So if you've got government computers that potentially are still using a software, like operating systems that are just full of holes, but you're still using Internet Explorer and you haven't updated, massive, massive problems.
So it would be better if just we switched to Linux.
Yes, well played.
Yes.
Don't say that with the fry at the end. It's not a question. It's a statement, Sasha.
That's
it's a
right.
statement. If you wanted to go there. And I think, you hit the nail on the head there, Jeff, where, the government has trouble keeping up with the technology because they don't have the manpower, they don't have the resources to constantly be upgrading and improving things. And quite frankly, in a lot of government IT departments are folks that went to school back in the 90s and are trained based on 90s tech. And if you're running NT on your server, well, that's probably because you were educated in the 90s and haven't improved upon that education. But also there's the fact that some people, some companies are held back by the technologies that they've invested in. So you think about an ActiveX development where they've paid tens of thousands of dollars to build on the Internet Explorer architecture a piece of software that is for their internal intranet, for example. So now you tell them they need to move to Chrome, and they look at that $20,000 bill that they paid 10 years ago and say, oh, you know what? We're not going to do it.
Right.
Yep. We're not going to rebuild our entire intranet.
An unpatchable vulnerability has been found in the Nintendo Switch that can be exploited to run custom code. Security researcher Kate Temkin has released proof of concept code dubbed Fusée that exploits a bug in NVIDIA's Tegra chipsets to run custom code on locked down devices. Temkin, who participates in the Nintendo Switch hacking project Reswitched, has developed a cold boot hack for the game's console that takes advantage of an unpatchable blunder in the Tegra boot ROM. She's also working on a customized Switch firmware called Atmosphere, which can be installed via Fusée. Essentially, Fusée exploits a vulnerability during a Switch's startup to commandeer the gadget and execute unofficial software. This is useful for unlocking the locked-down Nintendo Switch so that homebrew games, custom firmware, and other code can be run. You'll need physical access to the hardware during power-up to perform Fusée. It's not something that can be pulled off over the air. In a blog post outlining her findings earlier this month, Temkin explained the relevant vulnerability is the result of a coding mistake in the read-only boot ROM found in most Tegra devices. Temkin reckoned the issue is present in all Nintendo Switches. The nature of the flaw is such that it will require a hardware revision to fix. The boot ROM, which contains the programming bug, accepts minor patches in the factory but cannot be updated afterwards, according to Temkin. That means once a vulnerable machine rolls off the assembly line, the vulnerability is baked in and cannot be mitigated. Temkin says that the exploit was responsibly disclosed to and forwarded to other vendors that use Tegra embedded processors, including Nintendo. Successful exploitation compromises the processor's root of trust and provides the attacker with access to secrets burned into device fuses, as well as allowing arbitrary code execution. While such an exploit could be used for malware that compromises a user's personal data, due to the very nature of the Nintendo Switch being a gaming console, it's most likely that this will be exploited to root the device and create custom bootloaders for side-loading unofficial applications. Full details of the bug is set to be revealed on June 15, 2018, unless it is made public by others first. A parallel effort to create custom firmware for the Switch using the vulnerability, or one substantially similar, is underway by a group called Team Executor. So I love my Switch. I have one. I love it. I use it often. Less often now that I have a... Yeah. Less often now that I have a Vive, but that's besides the point. I use my Switch, and I wonder if it could be dual booted. Like if I could have my Switch and then also have this alternate thing where I could turn it into something more. We'll see.
I suppose at the end of the day, it's possible. I mean, that's where the exploit is in the boot sequence. So if you do have a way to physically get to it and input this code that gives you a dual startup, I mean, it's entirely possible. Absolutely. But the one thing I was wondering, though, is because it's a physical, you have to physically be there to get the code in, is this really going to be such an issue with a concern for malware? I mean, how many people are going to break into a home, hook up to a switch, put the code in, now access your data on the network?
I have to ask, though, Sasha, how do you get games on the Switch? How do they end up on the Switch?
I have to buy them.
But
like
are they
I go to
a
the
disc,
store.
or is it online?
It's like a little...
like an SD card looking thing?
Yeah. Do you remember the Nintendo DS?
Yeah.
Yep.
Super DS-y like.
So it's like a
Okay.
cartridge?
Yeah, tiny. Like when you say cartridge, it's like a thumbnail cartridge.
So in
but
that
you
case, Jeff,
pop
could
it
they
in.
not exploit a cartridge? Could they not, infect a run of games, for example, and then because you turn on the switch and boom, you're infected,
I suppose,
if
but
you will,
there's
right?
always a boot sequence before you load the game. So just
What if you put the game in before you boot? Isn't that how you do it?
Well, yes, but you still have to boot into the software in order to be able to read the game. So you would go. This is my guess from what the story is. You'd boot into the software first, then access the game. It'd be no different than starting up your Raspberry Pi and then being able to access RetroPie. Just by having RetroPie on there doesn't change the boot sequence unless there's a way to change the coding somehow, which I suppose is possible. But again, if it's a little
Right.
drive that you're sticking in your switch, you'd have to physically impact that drive. Now, so I mean, who knows? It's possible, I guess. I mean, it's still a new exploit, but it'd be interesting to see for sure.
Definitely side-loading games, custom games, indie games, being able to release games that you can play on a rooted Switch that you can all of a sudden, hey, you know, here you go.
Well, I mean, imagine being able to take all those ROMs you've got from, say, your RetroPie,
And put them on the
put them on
Switch.
your Switch. Now you've got RetroPie on the go.
There you go. We're getting into
It's a
some
fun-
crazy stuff here
It's
now.
a fun console, and it can be even more fun soon. That's the news story,
That's
really.
the idea. That's the idea.
Do you run Drupal? You need to upgrade immediately, as an in-the-wild exploit aims to take over your server. Attackers are mass exploiting a recently fixed vulnerability in the Drupal content management system that allows them to take complete control of powerful website servers. At least 3 different attack groups are exploiting Drupalgeddon 2, the name given to an extremely critical vulnerability that Drupal maintainers patched in late March. Drupalgeddon 2 makes it easy for anyone on the internet to take complete control of vulnerable servers simply by accessing a URL and injecting publicly available exploit code. Exploits allow attackers to run code of their choice without having to have an account of any type of any type on a vulnerable website. The mass exploitation of Drupal servers reminds us of the epidemic of unpatched Windows servers a decade ago, which gave criminal hackers access to millions of PCs. The attackers would then use their widely distributed purges to launch new instructions. Because web servers have significantly more computing power and internet bandwidth than a desktop computer, the new rash of servers being compromised by this exploit poses a much greater threat to the internet. Drupal maintainers have patched the critical vulnerability in both the 7.7 and 8 version families, as well as the 6 family, which maintainers stopped supporting in 2016. Administrators who have yet to install the patch should assume their systems are compromised and take immediate action to disinfect them.
Scary stuff.
It happens every week, I feel.
Just take Drupal and insert, you know,
I know.
anything else. WordPress.
So you have to just update and you have to run, you know, your security patches and everything. Like, you have to install them, and it has to happen all the time. My question is, why exactly would somebody not do that? I feel like, wouldn't all of these news stories be gone if people just updated when they were supposed to update?
Yes, but that would require the human race to not be lazy. And really, that's about the only way to put it. For people who are going to run a server, run a website, you have to be security conscious.
Right.
So every day you should be looking to see, is there something where my system is at risk, where my user data is at risk?
Thinking back to the government office who can't keep up with the technology,
Yep.
you think about Drupal and content management systems get put into place because they're cost savings. We don't have to develop the back end. We can create a content management site. Our cost goes down. Now, if our cost goes down, part of that mentality is let's keep costs down. So maintenance falls by the wayside, and nobody is keeping active maintenance going with these websites. So, you see it all the time. People buy these cheap websites based on a content management website service because they don't have to pay a lot of money up front, but you do have to maintain it. And if you don't, you're going to be one of those exploited.
Yep.
Thanks, Robbie. And big thanks to Roy W. Nash and our community of viewers for submitting stories to us this week. Thanks for watching the Category5.tv newsroom. Don't forget to like and subscribe for all your tech news with a slight Linux bias. And for more free content, be sure to check out our website. From the Category5.tv newsroom, I'm Sasha Rickman.